Welcome back. It's time for business with William. Hello again, William.
Hi, Claire.
And Greece back at the top of the agenda. European finance ministers meeting in Luxembourg later.
Yeah, unsurprisingly at the top of the agenda. Of course, now that we've got that second election out the way after the first one was inconclusive, now we can really get going again with the business of getting the bailout in order. Of course, Greece is miles off its targets now because that second election took an extra 6 weeks than what was planned, and in that 6 weeks, nothing much was able to be done, of course. Now, there seems to be a choice. Does Greece get longer to meet its targets, or should it make further cuts to meet them? And as ever, we're seeing a split in the Eurozone between countries that want to be more lenient on Greece, such as France, and those countries, the hardline countries, including Germany, Finland and the Netherlands, which want it to make further cuts.
What about Spain? It's on the agenda too, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. And there have been anti-austerity protests taking there on Wednesday. And today, they're going to officially request that €100 million bailout, which was announced last week. The country's finance minister has been keen to point out that that bailout is just for the banks and not for the government or the country itself.
Meanwhile, France...
It has been a week and Spain has not been rescued. No, it has not been rescued. This is what the European Commission says. This is what the economy spokesman of the European Commission says, who also adds that Spain does not need any rescue as long as it carries out the structural reforms it is already carrying out.
Meanwhile, France has had some bad news when it comes to investment.
Yeah, it's slipping down the league tables when it comes to direct foreign investment, according to Ernst & Young, in a new report out from them. You can see that's 2011. For a long time now, France has been in the number 2 position in Europe, just behind the UK. Now, Germany has slipped in ahead of France. And, of course, Germany still in growth at the moment. France and the UK slipping back into recession, at least it's expected in France. The UK could itself be overtaken by Germany, which is only a couple of percent behind now when it comes to direct foreign investment in the EU.
All right, now there are reports in the French press pointing to cuts on the horizon.
Yeah, now so far, François Hollande, the new socialist president, has been very quiet on exactly where the cuts will fall. He's made a lot in his presidential campaign of raising taxes, particularly on the rich and on companies, but it is expected that cuts are going to be needed as well if he's going to stick to his deficit commitments, which he has pledged to do. Now, Le Figaro, the French newspaper, has claimed that it knows where those cuts are going to come broadly. It says that staffing numbers are going to take the biggest hits in all the ministries of the French government, except for those that are protected, which are education, justice and the interior ministry. It says that other ministries will need to make a 2.5% reduction per year between 2013 and 2015. That means basically that 2 out of 3 employees who quit or retire will not be replaced. François Hollande himself, I should say, has said on the sidelines of the Rio Plus 20 summit that does sound implausible to him, but he will have to make cuts at some point. We'll have to wait and see exactly where those fall.
All right, now, the US Federal Reserve has decided to continue Operation Twist, its plan to keep interest rates low by intervening in the bond markets. But Fed Chief Ben Bernanke has also cut his forecasts for growth in the US economy.
Optimism hasn't died, but it's weaker. The Federal Reserve says the US economy is growing, but slowly, and the job market hasn't picked up much either.
Unemployment is still too high. Our sense is that people are finding jobs, but just not at the rate that we would like to see.
The Fed has cut its forecast of US economic growth, down 0.5 percentage point from an earlier projection in April. It now expects the economy to only expand by up to 2.4% this year. As for unemployment, the agency predicts it will remain above 8%. To revive the stagnant economy and encourage borrowing and spending, the Fed has decided to keep short-term interest at record low levels at 0 to 0.25% until at least 2014. Bernanke also suggested the US economy was under threat from Europe's debt crisis and called on EU governments to take additional measures to stabilize the situation.
But if the financial crisis in Europe kind of morphs into this cascading organ failure, kind of like a financial collapse, then that could be very problematic. So I think in some ways, the Federal Reserve, like the European Central Bank, they want to keep a little bit of their powder dry just in case the financial situation in Europe gets out of control.
The Federal Reserve has also decided to extend the program known as Operation Twist, a plan to sell short-term bonds while purchasing longer-term securities to keep interest rates low.
And how have the markets reacted to this news?
Well, obviously, a bit of disappointment to that news that forecasts have been downgraded, and also that there will be no QE3, as it's known, that further stimulus measure. As you can see there, the US markets finished mixed, basically slightly down mainly. Similarly, in Asia, things have been broadly down. Weakening yen in Japan has helped to see that market rise slightly, but elsewhere, news from China, the manufacturing index from HSBC implies a slowdown is on the way in that sector.
All right, let's now take a look at some more business news in brief. As uncertainty continues over the result of Egypt's presidential election, the country's currency has fallen to a 7-year low. The Egyptian pound was at 6.049 to the dollar at its low point on Wednesday, before strengthening slightly in late trading.
Apple has been ordered to pay damages to Samsung by a court in the Netherlands over a patent dispute. The court said that Apple had infringed a patent governing how phones and tablets connect to the internet. The result is the latest in a string of similar disputes between the two companies.
And electronics retailer Kessa has announced a 42% fall in profits as customers put off purchases of white goods. It also took a loss from the sale of its struggling UK arm Comet. The company announced it's going to change its name to Darty after its market-leading French brand.
Next, Airbus is planning to offer larger seats, saying its customers and passengers have got larger. But as with everything, if you want extra space, you're going to have to pay more.
You could call it cashing in or catering for all your customers. Airbus's new seat for the larger passenger is 20 inches across. That's 2 inches more than the current standard. But that will come at the expense of other travellers, as neighbouring seats will have to be slimmed down. Airbus says it's moving with the times.
Over the last 30 years, human body changed. We are bigger, taller, larger. An idea to offer extra comfort for people who want to pay for it, and generate additional potential, revenue potential for airlines.
Cash, then, is the key. Airbus says potential buyers, the airlines, could charge an extra fee for the bigger seats. For €8 extra a ticket, the scheme could generate €2.5 million over a 15-year period. That's per seat. In part, that could help offset the increased fuel costs incurred by heavier passengers. Of course, budget airlines have already capitalised on seat plans by cutting legroom to get more passengers on board. Now the focus is making sure every seat is generating value for money. The US is the target market, where 1 in 4 people are obese.
And that's it for business. Thanks very much, William, and thank you for watching France 24. Do stay tuned.